everybody, I'm Sarah with the Big Blue House Homestead, and today I'm going to take you on a quick garden tour. I have pretty much planted 100% of my garden. I'm down to like putting the basil around the tomatoes and putting some eggplants in and a couple more peppers, and that's it. And then I am like done, like completely done. So I'm excited about that. If you did not know, I'm actually in South Carolina, Zone 7B. And today I'm just going to walk around and show you what it is that I have going on. I'm not going to go through every variety yet. There's no sense because you're not going to see the types of tomatoes and all of that. So today we're just going to walk around and show you all the growth that I have and some of the things that are producing. And I did bring a basket and clippers because yeah, it's time to start harvesting. First of all, you can see my garden completely behind me. I am a real gardener. I am not a pretend gardener, which means I have weeds, I have hot messes, I have plants that have died, I have things that need to be pruned, things that need to be staked. There's a lot of work in this garden. I'm not going to hide that from anybody. I want you to know that that is exactly how gardens should be. Gardens are not pretty and pristine and weed free and all of that. If you get that way, good for you. I personally can never get weed free. It happens. Nature happens. So let's walk in. I think I'm going to take you on the right side. I don't know. We can go on the left or the right. I have two gates. So I think I'll take you on the right side since we're closer. And let's look at all the stuff going on in the garden. Sorry, the roosters are going nuts. But this side of the garden was actually going to be a giant sweet potato patch. And at the last minute, I decided not to because I had so many tomato plants left over. So I've basically come through and I have lined the entire perimeter of the garden in extra tomato plants. Perfectly fine with me because I love to have more tomatoes. These squash in the middle, these are actually volunteer squash. They just showed up on their own and I left them. And I got to show you how big this one is right here. Look at this. It is ginormous. It is a massive plant. Literally, this is the biggest squash plant I have ever grown. And I'm not sure what it is. It looks like it could be a zucchini of some sort. I don't know. We'll see. So back here I've planted all of my watermelons. You can see all of these tomatoes need to be staked up. I will get to that. It's a lot of work in this garden. But I'm not going to complain because they look healthy and they're putting off blossoms. And I do believe this is a black seaman or a black from Tula. I'll have to look up to see exactly what it is. I do have plants that look awful. Like this one right here does look like it's got some disease starting. And maybe after I prune it and stake it up, it'll do better. Went through and I planted basil in between and stuck marigolds in between. And those will all just start bushing out here real soon. I also planted a bunch of cantaloupes over here. I'm hoping that I can get this all covered so it stays weed free. And I can prune down these couple squash a lot because they really need to be pruned down. But then I can just make this a big melon patch and I can just walk around the outside and actually get the tomatoes. Okay, so this row I've got some heat tolerant spinach planted. I've got some squash. Most of these tomatoes on this line are my paste tomatoes, Principe, Portuguese, and San Marzanos. That's what I went with this year. I did throw some Romas in the ground just in case, but I am loving these tomato plants. Can you see all those blossoms? I mean, this thing is just loaded down. And like I said, weeds. That's my onion patch. I have to get out and weed all that out. And then I have leeks in the back and you can't even see them because there's just so many weeds. But I am saying that there's a benefit to having this many weeds. Look at how the lace beetles have come through and just eaten these leaves rather than my plants. So yeah, I'm not going to complain because kept them off the rest of my stuff. All right, so I started pruning these squash plants because they have taken over the actual path that I have in my garden, but there's a lot of squash there. This trellis will get filled with noodle beans, but these are volunteers. And I have a tendency to just leave volunteers in my garden. And this one's actually vining out really far. So I'm assuming it's a pumpkin. All right, so these little happy pollinators here, these are actually a garden huckleberry. And they are doing wonderful. I am loaded down with berries. I love growing stuff like this. This is things that you cannot buy at the grocery store. And so I have an opportunity to try something new. And like I said, they're loaded down with berries. They turn a little darker. I'm not sure if you can see that. They'll get dark purplish, kind of almost black. And they actually aren't bad tasting when they're raw, but I'd prefer to make a jam or something out of them. This is a melon plant. It's a Tigger melon, small personal melon. It's starting to trail up. I've been training it to get it to go where it needs to be. Tons more squash right here. And these things, I've never had squash plants get this big. I don't know what's so different about what I did this year, but holy cow. Got bush cucumbers. They looked awful when I put them in. See how bad that one looks? They're popping back and they're doing really good. And then down the row, I have peppers. I have okra. This is actually a cucumber plant. I need to get it trellised up, but as you can see, I need to trim out more of these leaves. And I'm starting my first signs of nasty little bug eggs. And look, right there. Oh, go away. Quit laying eggs on my plants. So that's part of my project today. I'm going to come through and I'm going to scoop off eggs, check the bottoms of my leaves, make sure there's nothing on those, and trim out these squash because they need it. All right, so this okra is actually doing really well compared to the others. I don't know why. I mean, I put them all in at the same time, but this one's just thriving over here. I did plant okra here last year, so I'm thinking it's a good spot for okra. I don't know. The rest of this black plastic is all of my ground cherries, and they are actually becoming really loaded down. And this is another cucumber, and it's trailing up pretty good. I still need to continue to train. I did lose a plant. I don't know what happened to it. I'm not sure, so I will pull that one out. But this back trellis, even though it's got weeds around it, it has a couple volunteer plants, and then there's some sort of pumpkin or squash as well. And then it's covered in Asian beans, the green noodle beans. So hopefully that starts to fill out. I really need to get some more seed out here because this one side looks really bad compared to the other. And then I've got some tomatillas planted. They did not do well for me. A lot of them have died, and I'm not sure why. But the two right here are actually for my Shed Wars competition, so they're thriving and doing pretty well. That bed back there, not even going to look at it. You guys ignore it. That's my corn. You see how bad that looks? It is just so covered in weeds. It's hard to keep up with a garden that is this big, and it's me doing most of the work. So hopefully soon I can get my kids out and my husband out, and we can actually just get rid of that mass amount of weeds. Oh, I have to watch where I step. This line right here, all the way down, is actually beans, and they're coming up, and this part is a path. But these tomatoes I did not prune yet. These are the Mountain Princess. It's my first year growing them, and I'm actually quite impressed. It's loaded down with fruit. All of them are. I mean, there's just tons of tomatoes on these plants. I'm showing just a little bit of disease here and there. Like this plant doesn't look like it's doing too great. So I'm going to try to prune up today and see if I can make a difference over here, because I'd really like to get as many of these tomatoes as possible. This trellis is Armenian cucumbers, and I put 6 plants, 3 on each side, and I think next time I do this, I'm going to put 1 plant. They go everywhere, and you can see how full this already is. It's a crazy mess. Got some Jimmy Nardellas over here, put in some extra cherry tomatoes. This trellis is covered in Malabar spinach. Another big row of beans. I've got some tomatoes in the back that need to be pruned. I also planted some peppers back there, some flowers, some sunflowers. And this little trellis is just a couple extra cucumber plants I had. I'm going to put some chicken wire on it. It'll be good. And then I have all this extra space, so I need to fill that in. Lots of great pepper plants over here. They are doing awesome. But you can see I've got pots full of leaves. This is from pruning last night. These tomatoes are really nice and pruned, and they should do really well. It's just a whole strip of heirlooms. Got a ton of peppers here, some basil in between, another big row of beans, and then these are another run of the Mountain Princess tomatoes. Hopefully they do well. All right, it's starting to rain. I'm gonna have to take a break. I decided to fight through the rain because I think I can get this done in time before it gets hard. Lots of peppers over here. These zucchini plants, you can see there's a big difference in size. The smaller ones I just put in about a week ago, and the larger ones are only been there for about 3 weeks or so. These are just extra plants, and I needed to do something with them, and I hate wasting the plants. I absolutely hate wasting them. But you can see, if we walk over to this big guy over here, I got zucchinis everywhere. So that's what I'm gonna be harvesting today. So yeah, that's not bad. 3 zucchini today. Time to start picking squash daily because there's a lot going on. I don't have any over there that are ripe, but I probably have a bunch over here that are ready. So let's go check those out next. I do need to get the grass mowed. I told you this is a real garden and there is a real mess, but I've got all those snake gourds over there and they're doing really well. They're starting to trail up and you can see the other half of my garden. In case anybody asked, I do have raised beds. I don't prefer raised beds. I like in-ground growing, but I was trying to build the soil up in these so that this fall, within like the 2 years time that it would take, this fall I would be able to pull those out and till that into the ground and plant beets and carrots and things like that. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 total. There might be 7 because there's so many weeds. I can't remember. But whatever this stuff is, I cannot get rid of it for the life of me. It is so hard to get rid of. I pull it, it goes down in the ground, it's underneath in a big like root system, and it just grows all the way back. So yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. Maybe I'll be able to get it cleaned up and get these tilled out, and maybe I can use them this fall. If not, I'm pushing for the spring. Then I'll have to do some other stuff by covering and more mulching, and I don't know, we'll see. All right, hopefully you can see all of the trellising that I put up over here. I have 5 trellises total. This one has the hyacinth beans, and I'm hoping they pull out really well because they're growing big. More volunteer squash, a row of okra, and these did not survive. I only had a few that made it, but I've actually gone through and I've put in some more seed and they're coming up. So I'm grateful for that. That means I'll be able to get a full row. You can see the beans over here are doing awesome. They've just popped up like crazy. More of the extra squash, more peppers, more basil, and that row is all cherry tomatoes. And they're doing really good. Let's get closer and see. By the way, if anybody knows what this is, can you please tell me? I had used cow manure this year, put it all over my garden, and it brought this weed in. And I don't know if you can see those really well, but it is covered in spikes. It is a nasty, awful plant, and I hate pulling it. But I don't know what it is. I can't figure it out at all. Yeah, so some of my pepper plants over here aren't doing well. I'll have to come through and replace those. Lots of squash plants this way. Lots of squash plants that way, and you can see lots of blossoms and lots of squash in there. These are not quite ready to where I want them to be. All right, so let's check on these cherry tomatoes. See, I have tomatoes everywhere. The plants are just getting loaded down. All right, so this row of beans came up the quickest, and that was the highest germination rate on any of my seeds. So I'm excited about those. Lots of squash back there, more peppers, more squash, more beans. Got more peppers, some basil, a big long row of heirloom tomatoes. Once those start setting fruit, we'll go through varieties. But I basically came through and I just stuck tomatoes in cages wherever I can. These are supposed to be closed in almost like a square, but I found in the years that I've been using them, you can open them up and put them in the ground this way. And then if the tomato plants get too heavy, just prop a piece of wood behind them and it'll hold them up. So it works really well. So dual purpose things like this. I mean, you're going to spend the amount of money on a cage for 1 tomato. Why not try to use it for 2 or 3, you know, however many you can fit in the ground. All right, talking about the trellises, this one is all Kentucky Wonder pole beans. Didn't have enough rain, so not all the seeds germinated, but I'm hoping they'll start popping up since we're getting rain now. And in between, I did the squash, and these have honeydews, and this side has a cucumber. Actually, there's 2, but one of them died. I had 3, but 1 died. But you can see it's setting. I got a little baby cucumber in there. See, just my first one. Looking in here, you can just see all the squash. None of it is quite ready. There's supposed to be a smaller version, but I don't think they're ready enough. And these plants, luckily, don't have eggs on them. That's the first out of all of my squash plants that are not infested with bugs yet. I planted pole beans all across this trellis as well. Like I said, some of them didn't come up, but you can see the difference in growth on these. Those got a little bit extra rain, so they're finally showing up. And again, weeds. It happens in gardens. That's, you know, real life stuff. So I don't hide that. I'm not going to come through and clean it and then give you a garden tour. You can just look around the weeds. More tomatoes, and all of these back here are a bush huckleberry. And they were doing pretty well. I've got a lot that didn't survive. I think I'm missing 4 plants here in the center, and then it goes back. But my biggest problem back here are all of these wild blackberry canes. They could be blackberries, they could be raspberries, I don't know. I can't ever tell the difference, but they are just taking over my garden. And I'll have to come out with a shovel and start digging these up, but I will not complain. Because I let all those go wild, can you see all those berries? I am loaded down with these berries. I have enough to feed the entire state of South Carolina. No lie. That's just one section out of 3 acres. And a heads up, Japanese beetles mating. Yay, they're getting ready to come in full swing now. I'll be ready for them too. Okay, on this back trellis, I have 2 kombucha squash. You can see that they're trailing out. I need to start to get them pulled up onto the actual trellising. And those right there are mashed potatoes. Not the kind that you put butter and cream in. These are a type of squash called mashed potatoes. And so I was really excited to get my hands on those seeds, and I really want to try them. That is a poor, sad patch of okra. I think there's 3 plants that made it. So I'm replanting that as well. Turning around real quick, I do have 3 cushaw squash right in here. And they're big, long trailers, and that's why I didn't plant anything here. I'm hoping after I clean up the weeds and I get some more grass clippings down, because that's been working pretty well for me to maintain some of the weeds. Once I get more grass clippings down, they can just trail through this entire area. And they make giant squash, like watermelon sized squash. So they need some space. But see, just to show you, I'm putting down all of this grass clippings when I mow my grass. And a lot of it is not weeded. There's just some of these larger plants that have, you know, stockier roots or that are already in the ground. And they just pull right out. That one's got spikes. Hopefully I don't get stuck. Nope. But it's keeping down majority of what would be a weedy mess over here. I mean, you can see the difference in this side of my garden. It doesn't look as bad, and it's not completely covered with the grass, but where the plants are, a lot of that is. And then over here, big difference, right? So I recommend trying to use grass clippings. It does help. All right, I don't think there's much more that I can show you at this point. I just kind of wanted to show everything that's growing so you can see how big my garden is and what's actually producing. And yeah, it's nice and beautiful and green and lush, so I'm excited. I will come through later and do varieties and show examples of all the things that I am growing, because there is a lot of stuff in here. All right guys, well, I just wanted to kind of show you what my garden looks like. I am going to have more to add, some eggplants and things like that, and as things grow I'll be able to show you what stuff actually looks like what the fruits look like. Right now it's just all green, and I'm happy about that. As long as it's green and it's alive, I'm ecstatic. So I'm impressed with myself this year. I actually lost space. I'm standing in half of the garden on the left side. You can see that. And I used to plant over here, but didn't do well for me. So I decided not to plant over on this side, and even losing that and my raised beds, I still stuck just as many plants in the ground, and boy, oh boy, there is a lot of stuff in here. Some point I'll count it all and I'll let you know, but I can tell you right now, there's probably like, 200 bean plants and 200 tomato plants, and just way too much work and way too many weeds and all that good stuff. So thank you guys for stopping by. I hope you come back to see the growth. I hope you come back to see the progress, and I will be showing what I do with a lot of this when it comes to preserving the foods, canning the foods, and even, some recipes to share and things like that. But I'm gonna head inside because I've gotten dripped on a few times, and I want the rain to hit my garden, not me. So thank you again, you guys. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe and come back for the next garden tour. I'd love to see you again. Bye.